This is extremely important actually, and this is one area of failing that I'm so happy is being addressed. I myself have been guilty of that as well, because whenever we talk about performance of judges or indicators for courts, we do it from a very normative perspective of what we think the system should be doing, right? So this is a very normative value to it, but realizing that ultimately this entire system exists, we exist, this whole apparatus exists for the litigant, right? If there were to be no litigants, there would be no judiciary, right? So that is the person for whom everybody is in existence, you know starting from a judicial officer in the lower court to the Chief Justice of India. They owe their existential justification to a litigant, right? Without a litigant, there would be no this grand office of the Chief Justice or judges or anything, right? So I think it's very important for litigants to have a much better understanding while they make decisions concerning the legal mechanism, starting from whether to approach it or not in the first place to how to navigate it. But unfortunately, the general opacity of data, right, and opacity and scarcity both, there is scarcity of data, and the data which is there is also very unfriendly for analysis, right, has meant that uh, social capital, economic capital, connections, where you are, all these things play a much bigger role in the kind of decisions that litigants can take. So if I'm a litigant without enough social capital, I actually have no means of finding out what I should do and what I should not do. And even with those who have social capital, the basis of their decision is not empirical but anecdotal, right? So I think it's extremely important, this pivot, that okay, we need to create court metrics, we need to create measurements which are useful to the litigant, to the actual tangible choices that they're making. I think that's a very important development.
Any thoughts on such a eclectic mix of people coming together?
Across 12 states, it was a big project. So we looked at, what are the parameters of promotion and these things like that. It was really important work, and we wanted to consult people before we finalized the report. And we couldn't find enough people to talk to, right? Part of it could also be because we didn't know. It's not that there are not enough people, right? I'm very sure there are people at the same time doing things, but the whole, so we did organize a consultation, but the feedback was still limited, right? Now these connections are so enriching, right? You walk into a room and you hear so many different perspectives that you haven't had the time to think about, right? So many things that you very intuitively agree with, some of the things very intuitively disagree with, right? But you are all the better for it because that conversation is happening. And it's also extremely empowering, earlier in the when we were having this discussion, I think Bhargavi mentioned this, right? Working in this space can be very lonely because
You work in
nothing
silos and
nothing
yeah,
moves,
nothing moves.
right?
Yeah.
Change is very extremely incremental and very slow, but so we are all suffering, but it's good to know that we're suffering together.
Yes.
Right.
Uh, any big takeaways from you from the meeting today? Something that you walked in with certain expectations. You're walking out after a full day's session. What's the one thought that you're taking away with you, or something that has given you something to think about? Or
That this can be something very big, right? That we have a, so this is essentially a prototype, right? This is essentially a prototype that okay, something like this, if this were to be replicable in other context, whether that is useful or not. So that's the beginning of something. I'm very hopeful that if this continues, if it's, obviously it will require a lot of adaptability as you move across different case types, as you move across different jurisdictions, and there are challenges to the source from which you'll get the data and everything. But I think the most important development for me is this change in perspective. Not exactly a change, but the emphasis on this perspective, that what's the purpose behind looking at data, right? We were discussing so many things that there's just too much of data around us now, and that's going to only keep on increasing all the time. We are not even at a fraction of it, I believe. Like 10 years from now, we will have billion times more data than we do today. And then the challenge is going to be, okay, there is data. Now why is data useful to me? What does it mean to me, right? And I think this perspective that data must be meaningful for the litigants, right? Because the entire system exists for them. I think that idea is extremely important. And once the community embraces this idea uh, institutionally, like, kind of, it becomes a part of your wiring, right? I think a lot of exciting things can happen from there on.
Thank
Thank you.